Good Friday afternoon, evening, wherever you may be. Victor, you're here.
I'm somewhere, yes.
You're here, you're there, you're everywhere.
Exactly.
What was the old ZZ Top song? You're nationwide. Do you remember that song?
I don't
You
know.
probably don't. Okay. By the way, your mic sounds fine because we didn't have time to check.
Yeah, good.
I was in another meeting, so I'll leave it at that. Martin, Netherlands. Good to see you.
Yeah,
Thanks for being
I'm
here today.
close by, Denmark.
Oh, you're in Denmark. Wait, is that where the tulips are? Is that Holland again?
No, Netherlands is where the tulips are.
Netherlands is tulips. Okay. Yeah. Worldwide geography is not my jam. Hi, by the way, we are back after 2 weeks off. Victor has been traveling a lot. In fact, Victor is still traveling, but at least this time he was available. So
Exactly.
that's why we're here. Michael, thanks for hanging out from the UK. So that's good. I don't know how the show will go today because we've had 2 weeks of data to sift through.
Okay. So we have abundance of data. That's good.
We have abundance of data, but I don't know if I can summarize it to where it's going to make sense. So this just might be a raw data episode, if you will. We'll see how it plays out. By the way, my name is Darren. This over here is Victor, because I've said his name a few times. And we're the co-host of a podcast called DevOps Paradox. And on most Fridays, we do this live show. So we're back. We should be back actually for a few weeks, because I think you're actually home for 2 weeks after this, or something like that, or at least 1 week. I hope you're home for at least 1 week, because we're recording next week. So you're at a conference, I would have to assume.
Yeah, in GoTo.
GoTo.
That's the name of the conference. Yeah, GoTo.
Okay. Karen, good to see you. Thanks for being here. Has it been fun yet, or has it started?
No, it's finished.
It's
Actually,
finished.
today are what they call master classes, the hands-on workshop, stuff like that.
Right. Oh, they do those afterwards instead of before. Interesting.
Yeah, afterwards.
Huh. It's not a bad
I
idea.
actually prefer afterwards. If I'm going to do a talk in a workshop, typically workshop is a longer version of
Of
a
the
talk, and
Right.
the other way around would destroy the talk.
Right. That makes sense. But we've done it that way for so long. Oh, never mind. Let's get into the show. Since we have been gone for 2 Fridays, that means we've missed 3 episodes that we haven't talked about. The first one, 3 weeks ago, was with Sam Lambert from PlanetScale. If you haven't listened to it, you need to listen to it. Very interesting story about how on his first day at work at GitHub, he brought down GitHub. Very interesting story. Mark, hello from Nashville. Go have some Nashville hot chicken for me tonight, please, because that would be good. Have you ever had Nashville hot chicken, Victor?
No, I haven't been in Nashville. That's one of the destinations I have to go.
Okay.
It's
What
on
you
my
should
bucket
do.
list.
So what you should do, since we're planning this
Okay.
right now, when you come over for KubeCon in Chicago in October, you should, instead of going right back, you should route through Nashville, either before or after, and go to Nashville.
Okay, so is Nashville one of the major airports?
It is major enough. I think so. You would still need to go into Chicago because that will get you your best international, like your ingress into the States. But then you could hop down to Nashville, do like a round trip to Nashville, spend a day or two, go back up to Chicago, and then go home.
Yeah, actually, that sounds very good. Assuming that I find the ticket. Kind of, if it's 2 flights is what I can bear to
Yeah.
Chicago. If that turns up to be a three flight leg, then no.
Yeah. But Chicago to Nashville is direct. It's not
Yeah,
a bad
I'm more
drive
worried
either.
kind of whether... I never heard anybody having a direct flight from Barcelona to Nashville.
Nashville, there isn't. No.
Okay,
But
then
Chicago.
no.
No, as I'm saying, you have to go to Chicago and round trip from Chicago to Nashville.
Ah, you
and
mean
then go back
Chicago,
out to
Nashville, back to Chicago, and
Chicago and then
then...
back.
Yeah.
Yeah, not horrible.
That's yeah.
Actually, you could book it that way, but that's a different story. We can talk about that later. Anyway, that was PlanetScale. 2 weeks ago, we had Jim Douglas on from Armory talking about coding in the age of AI. but with kids. So we talked about, what's the one? Minecraft. And this is going to get even more interesting as time goes along, because now kids grew up on Minecraft, for the past 10 years, right? Ish. But now what are they growing up on? Right, but they're now going to be growing up on AI assistive learning.
On AI assistive TikTok.
I hope not.
That's what kids are growing up with. Yeah.
Hey, again, good to see you. And Mark, this is for you, Victor. If you go to Nashville, you got to look up Mark. So
okay, it's a deal.
It's not a big deal. And then this week's episode was with Anton from Stigg. And if you're building a SaaS and you're trying to figure out how to do pricing, and you're trying to figure out how to do entitlements, and you don't want to write that yourself, just go look at Stigg. Even if you choose not to use Stigg, they've solved the problems for you. And what is what's the thing, Victor? If there's only one option, you should use the option. We were talking about that.
If there are no other options, that's the one.
Yeah, that's the phrasing. If there's no other options, that's the one you want to use. Until you don't use it anymore. Right? So podcast comes out on Wednesdays at 6 a.m. Eastern. That's noon CET. And for Mark, for you, that is at 5 a.m. Central Time. So, because I could do the math on that one easily enough. Speaking of changes, Amazon has now shipped 127.
Impressive. Very
Good.
impressive.
And that was within about a month, right? Does that sound about right? It's a month to 6 weeks, which is what they said they were going to do.
Yeah. They are probably now the company with managed Kubernetes that is fastest in keeping up.
Well, anytime there's a new release, and you can go back through and Google for this headline and then just change out the 127 with 126 and 125. So you can follow this pattern, but this is the other part of the pattern you have to do. Go to the very bottom of the blog post. You can sort of skip everything in the middle. It's like you find, okay, this is it. Go to the bottom first. They should just put this at the top. They provide
exactly
4 cycles at any one time, unlike Azure, who's going to be doing what now? 6, which is 6 or 8. Blah, blah, blah. So if you're still running 122 and 123, please consider upgrading to one of the newer versions. So I will tell you, based on what somebody told me before, they decided just to wait it out, and it got auto-upgraded for them. And they weren't very happy about it.
Yeah, but a company cannot give you support for infinite number of releases of something. Now, whether that should be 4 or more or less, that's a separate conversation. But that's if you cannot support something, what's the option? Either to cancel the contract and say go away, or to say, hey, if you don't do it yourself, we upgrade it for you.
Okay. Here's something I haven't said before because I didn't think I had the words for it, but I think I do now. And you may disagree with me on this. If you cannot commit, so let's assume that you're going to go with a cloud provided, because I can't call EKS fully managed because it's not. It's just not. The control plane is, but not the whole thing, right? So that we agree on. If you cannot commit to keep up with the upgrade cycles that are laid out, and in this case, this is a whole year. So if you can't upgrade your Kubernetes cluster once a year, you don't need to be using Kubernetes, period. End of story.
Yeah, I agree. Especially since we are talking about managed or semi-managed or whatever you want to call it, managed services, right? So the part of the load is taken away from you, right? The part of the work. So there is less excuse, I feel, not to be close to up to date with managed services than with, I don't know, self-managed on-prem, right?
But again, if you can't commit to do what they are going to do to you, then don't use it.
Exactly.
In
case of AWS, there is no such question, because if you cannot commit to it, they're going to upgrade it for you without asking you. So The question, it's not that much whether you commit, but which choice do you want? Do you want to upgrade yourself or to be auto-upgraded? Those are the choices.
And based on the people that I've had the auto upgrades happen to, they didn't want that to happen. But it happened.
You should want auto-upgrade, yes.
Anyway, 127 now available with AWS EKS, which is a good thing. Almost like clockwork. They've got it down. It's almost like they understand automation. Gee.
They know something about it, yeah.
Yep. I saw this come in from Loft. They announced DevPod last week, I believe it was. 16th, yeah. Codespaces, but open source. Have you had a chance to even read about it? I know you probably haven't gotten hands-on yet.
I did read about it. I did briefly even put my hands on it. It's what the title says. It's Codespaces without having to be managed by Azure.
Okay.
Or GitHub, or however you want to call it, right?
Right. I saw Brett did a live stream with them last Wednesday. It was sort of like a one-off with these guys. What do you think? Is this now the thing to do?
I guess depends on. So, I personally don't see if I'm going to use something like that. Hey, why not managed by Azure or GitHub, right? So I'm not sure that I see a lot of value in saying, oh yeah, but this thing is not really managed by them. It can be managed by you, right? Now, because I guess it would be a valid option for people who want to use it inside their Kubernetes clusters. And then you can say, okay, but no, I want to manage that, right? But then for people who are planning to use it with, I don't know, AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud, if you're already in hyperscaler, then why not managed by somebody, right?
I agree with that. But didn't GitPod try to do this? Or is this a variation of... Because this isn't the same as what GitPod had with self-hosted. Is it the same or not the same?
This is very similar to GitPod, yes.
Okay.
Codespaces is basically a ripoff in a way of GitPod, right?
Correct.
Exactly. So both are very similar. And my main complaint about my biggest complaint is can't you come up with a name that people can recognize? Because I cannot deal with DevPod, GitPod, DevSpaces, those two words are everywhere now. I cannot distinguish. A couple of times I got confused. Okay, do you know about DevPod? Of course I do know about GitPod.
Exactly. Okay. So anyway, DevPod now available as open source. I'll jump over this one pretty quickly. There was an interview with Kelsey Hightower on the GitHub podcast called the README Podcast. I recommend that you go listen to it. Very, very interesting podcast. So if you haven't heard all of Kelsey's story, go listen to it. That's not what I want to do. There we go. So building Chainguard's container image registry. This is a nerd thing for me because the reason why it caught my eye is they built it on top of Cloudflare R2, which is Cloudflare's S3 compatible-ish blob store. The big difference between S3 and R2, other than shifting each digit and number letter backwards, right? RS 23. Did you catch that? S3, there's egress fees. R2, there's no egress fees. So every time a bit flies out of R2, nobody pays for it except Cloudflare.
Exactly.
And they go into the backstory of all this and how they ended up at building this. And even get to the point, it's egress fees, right? This is the reason why Docker Hub is no longer free-ish, right?
And the fact that they need to earn money.
Well, besides that, yes. So they even go this. Okay, so the official Nginx image has been pulled over 1 billion times, 31 million times in the last week alone. So it's 55 megabytes. So that's 1.7 petabytes of egress. At S3 standard egress pricing of 5 cents per gig, that's $85,000 in 1 week. Same thing on R2,
Now, 0. True. Now, to be honest, if you have that volume, you're not paying standard prices.
No. So this is
it's a
fair.
valid point.
Yeah, it could have been up to, I think we can say that safely. It could have been up to $85,000 at worst case pricing. But it's not going to be $10 on best case pricing.
Exactly.
So I just thought this was a really interesting blog post. They don't go into all the. I'm pushing for this in a few cases right now with a few different people. Just go to R2 and don't pay. It's like, yeah, but how good is Cloudflare? Cloudflare is pretty darn good.
Exactly.
Especially when it comes to a blob store, right? Maybe you argue about their serverless platform or whatever else it is, but a blob store and networking.
That will change drastically in not so distant future, right? Because so far, I think that cloud services, SaaS, and this and that was all the game. Who is going to get the customer, right? There wasn't much fight with who is going to convert, because most of the people, once you enter AWS or Google or Azure, you're in there for good, right? But new services are coming, and Cloudflare is a good example how you can have competition for existing customers, right? Not anymore only for, hey, I'm starting today. I'm a new company. Where am I going to go?
If I was a new company today, I would be hard pressed to pick one of the big 3 hyperscalers as my first option. I would be willing to potentially change how I'm writing my application to be able to run somewhere else or across multiple things, right? Because if I could take Fly for parts of things, so I could use Fly for my primary application. But if I've got images and that's kind of asset, I would put that over onto R2. Yes, it's multiple things, but now going back to when we talked to Chaitin from Macrometa, the concept of a polycloud, right? I'm not doing multi-cloud when I'm thinking Fly and Cloudflare. I'm writing my own thing that goes across this, and I care about interacting with this top level. And these are just implementation details under the hood.
Yes, but not if that story is aimed as if you would be starting today in a relatively small and new company, startup, right? Because in those cases, you probably wouldn't have the person who would be making those decisions, right? If you exclude startups in our world, kind of cloud native, this or that, come on, you're a startup, you have 10 developers, 20 developers. Who is going to assemble all that? Well, whatever you just explained.
Right. They're just going to go to AWS or Azure and say, give me this, have a nice day.
No, I wouldn't go that far. I would say maybe not, this in Cloudflare, this over there and stuff like that. But I think that for new companies, solutions like DigitalOcean or Linode or Sivo are actually pretty good ones. Now, especially, and this is now a stretch, right? Small companies do not. But if you do have a Kubernetes guy or a girl, right, then definitely start with one of those, because it's Kubernetes. You can go to AWS 2 years later because you need HA or something like that, but you're not going to rewrite almost anything.
Agreed. Okay. Anyway, this was from Chainguard this week. By the way, the links for everything are going to be down in the description. I'll try to get them out later today. This one I was trying to get my head around. And maybe because I'm an old Java person, it didn't really click for me. So it's a language detector. So let's get into what this is about. It's about seamless automatic instrumentation, right? So how old language detection worked, you would create a pod, schedule it to run on the same node, you'd cross over, and once you figured out the language, it reports back to the instrumenter, and then it could start instrumenting things. So now supposedly they've got it to the point to where now it just goes into an agent and goes. Again, this was like way over my head, but it looked really interesting. Actually, let me rephrase that. I don't think it's not over my head, but since I haven't used it, I don't completely understand it. Because I think it's better.
I have a very rudimentary knowledge about it, so I might be completely wrong. But basically, it adds instrumentation at runtime, and instrumentation can be painful. So to me, this is absolutely awesome, right? You can have all the fancy stuff without rewriting your code. The problems will come if at some later time you need additional things and then you don't know what to do. What I would like to see from them, unless they're already doing it and then I'm completely wrong, is to have the option actually to instrument your code either at runtime, as what they're doing, if I'm not mistaken, right now, or to propose a PR, and so your code is instrumented, and then you can easily add the pieces that are missing, right?
Well, that seems like that would be a good extension. Like, first, get your code running, let it be runtime. It might be slower, air quoting slower, maybe not as robust, but then if it gave me PRs, I was like, oh, yeah, okay, I'll do that, and then all of a sudden let that cycle back through until finally it's still runtime, but not necessarily doing that cross-cutting like we would do in aspect-oriented programming years ago. And still today. So that's Odigos Language Detector. Here's something that you're going to have to create a video on. Policy-based cost management using OpenCost and Kyverno. And they walk you through step by step how to do this.
Yeah, I heard about it. I haven't tried it yet, but it looks very interesting.
But anyway, I'm just saying it's like a weekend project for somebody. Maybe not you. Definitely not.
Yeah.
I mean, this makes sense, though,
you
right?
know, I'm skeptical of how many. I think that it's great. I mean, if I would be in charge of a company, I would create policies that prevent you from going over your budget, right? Whatever the budget is. But then I can imagine that many companies, okay, so we're over our budget. We're going to fix it later, but we cannot actually apply the policies because there's two days left in this month and we cannot not run or something like that, right?
I agree with that. But at some point, you run out of money. It's just how far can you stretch that runway?
It's a good idea. I like it, especially coming from Kyverno. So big thumbs up for that one, potentially.
This week was Microsoft's Build conference, and Azure had lots of announcements. There was one thing, they now have the Kubernetes apps in the Azure Marketplace is now GA. So do you have your app in there yet? You should. There's also what's new for App Service, which is another one here. Code to Cloud with the Azure portal. This is it's in preview, but basically, to me, this is the Heroku model. I found this in the repository. It's going to deploy it. This is the thing that's a little bit different, though. It's going to deploy it as this. So in this case, it saw it was React, so it guessed it was a single-page app, so therefore it's going to send it to the static web apps.
Nice.
So it's very Heroku,
but with
smart
variations.
Yes.
Smart one instead of one fits all. Nice.
Correct. In preview. The other one that I think that I saw, here's the AKS announcements. This is one I wanted to show. Because I saw Lachlan, who we had on the podcast last year, I believe, who's with Azure. Operating Kubernetes at scale. So Fleet Manager continues to grow. So they're still going into Fleet Manager. That's good to hear. You can update groups, stages, and runs. So you can see how they update your clusters and under what conditions they move to the next deployment stage. Windows we don't care about. This one, though, is Azure Linux. So this is their container image is now GA. So it's now called Azure Linux. It was called Microsoft's Mariner Linux. Probably an acquisition.
Judging by a quick read, it doesn't seem to be the node image. Container image. It's node image, not OS.
Container OS. Container OS.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, thank you for correcting me. Which is basically the same.
I couldn't care less.
Well,
meaning kind of like, okay, I expect you're a managed provider. I expect you to give me the OS that makes sense.
I agree with that. But what I'm saying is now they've got a true container OS.
Nice.
Right? That's the key part there. That's just like we don't care about Kubernetes, we don't care what's actually running Kubernetes. Right? It's
exactly.
The layer gets even worse. How much longer, I was having the conversation with somebody before I came in here today. How much longer do you think until Kubernetes is no longer the thing? A thing that we really talk about?
It will take a while, but it must happen. It will be happening, for sure. But
if you
I
had
don't
to
think
guess
it's something that will happen this year.
Not this year, but if you had to guess in years, what range do you think?
Let's say 5 years.
I'm thinking 3 to 5 years.
I'm not saying that
it's not gone.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm saying 3 to 5 years, and it's not going to be gone, but we don't necessarily talk about, like, I would have to say that KubeCon will no longer be called KubeCon. That conference will be renamed to something else.
Yeah, Cloud Native.
Cloud Native Con or something, yes.
Yeah. I mean, we are seeing those things already, right? When I say 5 years, I mean, it will take probably 5 years until that's widely accepted norm, right? It will certainly start appearing sooner than that.
We've already talked about the Kubernetes app GA. So there's already some apps there. And they went through everything there. Okay, so I had one more that I want to call out, and I think I've already got it, but I'm going to double check to make sure I didn't miss something else. Cloud Native, let's talk about Cloud Native. Anyway, this is the one I wanted to call out. Jobs for Azure Container Apps. So ACI, was that what it was called before? The short name? ACA, whatever.
I don't know what's the short, but yeah, container apps.
So they've had apps and have been around forever, right? Here's my image, go run it. That was their GCR or ECS. This was that. But now they can do jobs. Seems like a small thing, but that's actually a huge thing, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Data processing. You ever heard of this thing called machine learning? It seems like some people are starting to use that now.
Machine learning something?
Yeah, I guess. On-demand processing, anyway. Jobs. So at this point, from my perspective, Azure Container Apps is now on par with GCR and with ECS.
Yes. I mean, I would say that it's on par with GCR. I don't see ECS in the same bucket. I think that ECS is something in between that and managed Kubernetes, kind of. I don't think it's the same category. I think that it would be closer to light sail, but without scaling and all the good stuff.
Okay. All right. It's not worth fighting over that. I'm okay with that. But it does manual, scheduled, and event-driven, which is what you would expect from a job-type app. It's basically really fat cron. So that's, and there's a lot of other announcements related to things that we do or deal with coming out of Build this week. So you should go take a look at it. The next thing was, a new Cilium course. You're going to go teach Cilium, right? No, of course not. It's a free course.
Not me, but yes.
No. A free course from Linux Foundation Training called Intro to Cilium. So if you haven't played with Cilium yet, you should go take a look at it. And it's free.
It's very likely that you haven't played with Cilium, but you're using it.
That's a much higher probability.
Yes.
Anyway, so that's new course. A handful of Google announcements. I got through this stuff a lot faster than I thought I would. In the past few weeks, Google Cloud Run now has two things in preview. You can do in-memory volumes, okay, whatever. You can deploy sidecars. You can deploy sidecars. I'll just leave it at that. And you can do, finally, GA, 32 gig of RAM and 8 CPUs. If you need something.
Okay.
Boy, if your app is that big, I could see it needing CPU. I can see CPU, but memory, that's the one thing. But again, you're not going to have an 8 CPU and 4 gig of RAM. You're just not going to slice things that way. I guess you could.
Yeah. Well,
Anyway,
I don't know.
those are announcements, and then there's the full blog post around the sidecar deployment. So agents, proxies, blah blah blah, just all the normal. Just like how sidecars work in Kubernetes is how sidecars work in GCR, more or less.
I think that sidecars in case of GCR are important because they are a workaround for whatever Google did not implement. Right.
that
So
would
let's
make
say
sense.
that you don't want their logging. How are you going to ship logs if you're not using whatever Google offers? Sidecar, observability, networking, whatever you need that is not there, that's going to be a sidecar. There is no other really option, really, if it's not implemented by Google.
Well, and taking a look at this picture, they're talking about, of course, my mouse, you can't see it, but at the bottom you see the in-memory shared volume. That is this announcement right here, where you can now configure in-memory volumes. So this allowed you to actually do this.
Exactly.
So you needed both. So again, they get into it, monitoring, logging, and tracing, proxies. Why would you want to do that?
Probably you have a requirement that is not fulfilled. Going back to my previous comment, whatever silly thing you're doing, Google Cloud Run doesn't give it to you, well, add the container.
Yeah. I want to pull this up from what Ari
I mean,
says
it's
here.
much better than saying, okay, you need to modify your application itself, the code to do that.
Yeah.
Much better.
Yeah. I want to go back to the Azure. The overlay CNI is now based on Cilium. That was one of the sub things there. I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, I think that, Google is also on Cilium, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm not sure about AWS.
I don't think so yet.
AWS probably has its own thing, whatever it is.
Yeah. And then I think that was networking and security, Envoy, whatever. Database. Oh, this is actually pretty smart. Database connection proxies.
Yeah.
That makes a lot, because then you can. No. Anyway, that's. See, now for me, I cannot justify using GKE at all.
But the complication with that is the more stuff Google Cloud Run starts adding, the less of a difference it will be between that and, let's say, GKE Autopilot.
Yeah.
Right? So it's very hard to establish that balance, kind of, hey, the less things you have, the simpler it is. We can probably agree on that. The more things you put there, the more complicated it is. And you have needs, so it needs to be more complicated. I'm not saying I'm not against it, but it will eventually become just as easy or complicated as Autopilot, for example.
Yep. And then related, unrelated. This is under the application modernization section. They now have a new CLI to migrate to containers. This is from Google Cloud again. So now
What does it mean, migrate to containers?
mean, here's my app running on Tomcat, turn it into an image.
Okay.
So this is lift and shift. This is the CLI to lift and shift.
I'm positive towards those solutions only and exclusively for companies who put a deadline on usefulness of that. Right? If it's lift and shift and see you in 10 years, I don't like that idea at all. Then why not keep it where it is?
Yep.
Now, if it's lift and shift, so that we have this also in the same network and cluster and whatever, and we have scheduled 2 months from now to actually, do it the right way, then yes, why not?
Different story.
So
Yep.
migration, to me, that's a migration story only.
Correct. So there's one CLI that's MFit and another that's called M2C, which I guess is modern to container, or what would it be called? M2C. I didn't see what that was called. Missed it. Anyway,
Monolith?
monolith to, could be. But they take you all the way through the example. Now, to me, what's funny though, is if I'm doing this, my example here would have been to Google Cloud Run and not to, because I'm talking about just peeling off this one application. That's
Yes, I thought that would be the main, that's not the main example?
No, the main example is to, they mention it there, but once you get down into the example here, it says, it generates a scaffold file for you.
Kubernetes.
And then Kubernetes.
Yeah.
Which, okay, maybe you can stop at this point because you understand GCR enough. Because I doubt that scaffold will do anything with GCR. Have you looked at that?
I doubt, and I can see kubectl port forward, so it's definitely Kubernetes.
Right.
The one that you highlighted.
Well, and they said here, you can build and deploy your GKA cluster with a single command. What if I don't want to build and deploy a cluster? What if I wanted to say, here's the image?
But look, I think that for lift and shift, that's too much of a stretch now, what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I know. I get it. But I'm trying to apply at least a little bit of logic to this. Anyway, here's what it boils down to. GCP now has 2 CLIs to help you take legacy and turn it into a container. Glad somebody did it. Of course, it's already existed. Here's Carlos's retort to the whole monolith versus microservices thing. You saw the Prime video. This happened. We didn't talk about it, but it came out the week that we were here last on May 5th. Did you see Prime? Basically, they said they saved 90% in their spend. Prime Video did.
Yeah, I mean, those articles I'm mostly ignoring, to be honest, because you find one example for whatever it is, and then somebody else finds one example against that it's something and things like that. Now we go in circles. An example, even if it comes from Prime, is not that important. Because devil's advocate could say, okay, but what's the rest of AWS running on? Sorry, Amazon running on? Did the rest of Amazon move to monolith? No. That's neither for or against monolith, but that's simply one example. It's like people are waiting for somebody to do, one person or one company to do something that goes in their direction and then start screaming about it. Fair enough. I'm not against monoliths or microservices. I'm guessing the blog here that goes in a direction kind of, hey, you need to deal with multiple things, multiple ways of working on something, right?
This one paragraph, I'll just read it. At Adobe Experience Manager Cloud Service, which is where Carlos works, we are running a whole range from tiny microservices to big Java monoliths. But here's where I laughed. So I'll try to give you my balanced, personal view on the topic. I don't think it's possible for Carlos to do anything balanced about this. I know it is. Carlos, I'm sorry. We've known Carlos for years.
A while, yeah.
Anyway, so it's a good read. And if you hadn't read, which I believe he does link to the Prime video, if you haven't read that one, if you've been under a rock for the past 3 weeks, go back and read that because it is interesting. And it's also interesting to me that, how do I say this? It's interesting that Prime Video has to pay for AWS services. And what kind of discount and reserved pricing are they getting?
I like that they have to pay. I like that idea in companies that it's not free, even if you're using the service that is provided by the same company, right? Because you need to become aware of those things. Otherwise, you just go crazy.
Right. It's fine. It's like, okay, we're ready to start testing this. And then everybody jumps on it and goes and does all the things. But at some point, just like you do to everybody else, everybody has to pay. If you're using it, you have to pay. Even if it's funny money, you have to pay. But I imagine this is, Prime Video is not part of AWS, so it's probably a hard cash negotiation, but probably over the lunch table.
Exactly.
Unlike us. So yeah, that's that. Ari had this one thing here. You should look at Azure deployment environments that's fresh out of MS Build. That would be another thing. I saw that one too.
Okay. I'll add that to my to-do list.
2026. That's good to hear. A handful of tools. This one from Datadog caught my eye. The Managed Kubernetes Auditing Toolkit. It's an all-in-one auditing toolkit for identifying common security issues with managed Kubernetes environments. Focused on EKS, but it will be extended. Now, AWS Labs had put out something called Hardened EKS quite a while back. And this appears to be a variation of that. You set it up and it comes back and tells you, hey, all these things are whatever. Trust policies, it'll do a little drawing, and then you can get into the rest of the things.
Makes a lot of sense. Because, those hardening tools, typically they are so generic that the recommendation they're giving you are sometimes not valid within your context. And at other times are not giving you a solution or really kind of what to do, right? I haven't tried that one, but I hope that, okay, so we are focused right now and it will be extended to AWS, EKS. Excellent. You need this. Kind of like, not a random thing or a generic thing, but do this, do that. If that's what they're doing, then that's absolutely awesome.
Yep. They got a little roadmap down here at the bottom. And Hardened EKS is actually listed here at the bottom as well. So that's MCAT from Datadog. What was this one? Oh, KubeStellar. Ari sent me this one a couple of weeks ago. KubeStellar was what was called
KCP.
KCP. Yeah, KCP Edge, I think is what it was, though. Because this one's
so
specific.
It was KCP, and then KCP split into KCP and KCP Edge. And then KCP Edge was renamed to KubeStellar. And by the time we are doing this, it might be already... Did you refresh the page? Just in case it changed the name again?
No, we're good.
Okay, it's still Stellar. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So if you need something super small, management, this is what you want to use, I think.
Oh, yeah.
It can exist anywhere. Farms, cruise ships, oil rigs, and even... space. I wonder if it's on.
Space.
I wonder if it's on the. What's space? I wonder if it's on any of the SpaceX stuff, or if it's on running on one of the rovers at some point. Anyway, KubeStellar.
Nice.
So we have a beginner's guide to eBPF from none other than Liz Rice, who is going to be on the podcast in a few weeks. I don't remember the exact date.
Yeah.
She's going to be on there. This is the full brain dump of Liz going back quite a while. It was last touched about 3 weeks ago. So that's, if you're needing to learn eBPF, this is the place to start, I think. We'll go with that.
Yep. If you're into eBPF, which is very small percentage of engineers, to be honest, I think that most of us will be users, not really digging into eBPF. But if you are, I cannot imagine a better person than Liz Rice to follow.
Yep. Mayfly is ephemeral Kubernetes resources. So it's a Kubernetes operator that enables you to create temporary resources on the cluster that will expire after a certain amount of time. Thus the Mayfly, because flies are born and die. That's the ephemeral thing. So the example here is I can annotate this pod with an expire of 30 seconds. So it will do its thing and then go away. I don't know.
So if that thing is accessible from outside, then I would say use Knative, and instead of figuring out when to expire, kind of if nobody's using it, then that's when it expires, right?
Right.
But I imagine this could be very useful for things that are not really, nothing has a direct access, right? Some kind of a job
type.
that is not really a job, that doesn't really necessarily finishes the process at one point.
Like, this could be interesting for specific test cases, right? You have something spin up and you expect a test case to finish in 3 minutes. So you put in, sometimes that you have a problem with the pod going down because of stupid things in your cluster.
Exactly.
Make it 5 minutes, and you know at least it's going to die in 5 minutes. And the people behind this are Namecheap. Namecheap's a domain registrar. So
Can you go back to the example for a second?
yes, right there.
You know what I would like is to add it on a container level, not pod level.
So have it here.
Because imagine me adding a debug container to a pod.
Oh.
And forgetting to remove it.
You've never
Wouldn't
done
that
that
be
before,
awesome?
have you? Yeah, that would be awesome. You've never done that before, right?
Of course not. I never forget to remove anything. Until, actually, I always remember to remove things, but sometimes when the bill comes.
Or you remember it when you don't have access to the internet to do something about it.
Exactly.
And then you forget it again. Yeah, so this is named, that's interesting. You ought to put in a pull request for that. Of course, it hasn't been touched in 4 months. So this looks like it was a push and walk away. But
Yeah.
let's see. On those resources with a duration value, I wonder if it would just work. Because they're not saying it's just
there's
the
more
pod.
to it. There is a deployment example about, below, right? Or no?
Yeah, no, that's just deploying
No,
the
that's
chart,
how to install it.
how to install it.
Because let's face it, most people do not create pods directly. So I would need that thing actually to go back to the parent resource
Right.
and do the thing.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, that's called Mayfly. And I just remembered I have a meeting in 10 minutes, so I'll get through this pretty quick. Chat AWS. Oh, this is our AI part of the show, if you will. It will be kept short. So this is create AWS Lambda functions and websites in S3 using ChatGPT.
Okay.
Just because you can. Okay, there you
Exactly.
go. And then this one was actually more interesting. So Brex is, I can't remember how to explain who Brex is, but Brex is a thing. Prompt Engineering Guide. And this thing is, if you look in the upper right-hand corner, you can see the little handle. That handle's small, so that means this page is long. And it goes through historically how, what's a prompt, how did it come about, and then all the way through. I thought this was a very interesting, and they even go into the concepts of tokens and stuff, which I still have a hard time getting my head around. So anyway, this is I thought this was a very interesting sort of soup to nuts of understanding the concepts of prompts. Who would have thought in 2023 we're talking about text? Okay. You had 3 videos. Again, much like how we had 3 podcasts, we've had 3 videos. The first one this was my favorite out of the 3, by the way.
Okay. Yeah. I repeated many times how I like Charm, and then I realized, hey, I just yelled that I love Charm projects and never did anything, so I did it. And I had a practical example for some other cases.
Yeah.
So it's awesome.
And then your next one was IDP implementation, which I thought
That's
was
one of
interesting.
those that takes months to create.
Yeah. And then finally, this week's was, should we run databases in Kubernetes? The answer is no. Always no. Except, let's just look at your numbers. Yeah, okay, good. So I was just looking at the numbers here. So this one has 6.8 thousand, or 6,800. Charm had 6,000. But your IDP one had 10,000. So, gee, I wonder which one is more interesting at this point in time.
Yeah, IDPs are very, very in right now. It's a topic of the year.
But anyway, so you went through kind of, what was this? Was it an operator? I would have to assume, right?
Yeah, Cloud Native PG is a Postgres operator. Open source, it submitted to join CNCF, so it should be there relatively soon, and it's awesome.
So you're saying we should run databases in Kubernetes now?
I think we should run some databases in Kubernetes. So the gist of what I'm trying to say is that we should not just run databases in Kubernetes in terms like, hey, I can define a stateful set, use a container image with Postgres or MySQL or Oracle, and off I go, right? We need much more for databases. Now, so what was missing for databases to run in Kubernetes? I mean, there are some still things that some might argue is missing, but generally we need database-specific controllers and constructs and all that stuff. It cannot be just generic Kubernetes stateful set.
You mean in order to run something complex, you need something a little more complex to run it?
Exactly. Because what's been happening, and the reason why people dislike the idea of Kubernetes databases in Kubernetes is, okay, I just do the typical thing, stateful set database, and then I essentially, and I'm simplifying it now, and then I SSH into container to do the operations I need to do on databases, right? That's a no-no. Don't do that. Now, if you find an operator with CRDs and stuff that will enable you to actually define everything you need without SSHing into container, then that's a different story.
You need to do a video. This will be like a hot take video, I think, of why you should never SSH into a container to upgrade it. I've been following a lot of projects like, how do I upgrade all the code that's running inside of my container? And my answer is, well, you just replace the image. Well, we can't replace the image. We need to upgrade the container that's actually running because we don't have an image.
So a quick story. A few weeks ago, a company that I'm not going to name asked me, hey, can you take a look at what we're doing and tell us what you think? And I started looking and I couldn't make it run. Oh, excellent. And I ping them and say, I cannot run this thing, right? It's some agent in Kubernetes doing something. And they said, okay, we're going to help you live debug it. And that's exactly what I want, right? And then the first thing that they told me is kubectl exec, name of the pod, sh. Okay, you're inside of the pod. Now go to this directory and then take a look at this file and tell me what you see. And I said, I have no time for this thing. Thank you. I'm not going to do that. You're just silly.
What? I mean, okay, so it's one thing, we're talking about a debug pod, right? Or a debug container in a pod. That's the purpose of doing those kinds of things. If you're having to actually
simpler.
I know, but it's just
logs. They wanted to see the logs.
Oh my goodness! Look,
exactly
logs.
Not. Yeah, but except when you have a solution that did not think that logs should be output to std out.
Wait, it's 2023.
And to make things more complicated, we are not talking about a product that existed a while ago and then it was put in Kubernetes. We are not talking about that. We are talking about a Kubernetes agent designed for Kubernetes. Something you start from scratch. And you design it to be an agent to run in Kubernetes, and then you need to hunt logs in various files across the file system of the container. Not good.
Look, it's not a secret. I'm not the most pro Kubernetes person around. I'm not anti it, but it's like I don't live in it. That's not where I live. But even I know that that's stupid. I'll use the S word, stupid.
Exactly.
I mean, talk about, forget the 90s, that's 80s and 70s thinking. Holy cow. Now my
I
blood
could
pressure's
even
going back
argue
up
that
again.
we should have been sending logs to std out before containers.
Agreed.
But I can look past that.
Right, because we didn't have a great way until we didn't have a great way to forward standard out consistently,
Exactly.
especially on Windows. There wasn't a great way, especially on
Exactly.
Windows. But now, oh dear. Okay. Anyway, I'm not going to get any more fired up about that because I have to go to a meeting that I haven't prepared for yet. Which isn't surprising, by the way. If you're ever in a meeting with me, it's usually not too prepared for. Well, actually, I usually
That's
prepare
every
for it.
meeting I have with you, except the time the one not prepared.
Yeah, well, okay. I actually prepare for things, but usually a week in advance, and then I've already, I have to pull up all the notes I wrote a week before, and it's like, oh yeah, now I remember what I was doing. But anyway, so we'll be back next Friday. We should be back next Friday, unless something bizarre happens, because you are home next week, finally.
I'm home.
Now, are you going to be home, or in the undisclosed location of home? It's that time of year.
So, I don't know. So, during the week, I will be home because school is going on and all that stuff.
Oh, that's
now,
true. School's still in.
Our stream is Friday. I might actually choose to spend the weekend in undisclosed location and then leave towards there before our stream. So,
Right.
I don't know.
So that's always the good thing about us having 6 hours difference, is you have time to choose to be in one or the other,
Exactly.
typically. So, okay. Thanks, everybody. We will talk to you again next week. And hopefully we'll have better news next week. Maybe the U.S. won't default on its debt. We'll find out. Hopefully we'll know by then.
What's the deadline next week?
Yeah, I guess. I've lost track. Details, right?
I feel like it's a story in a movie that you know how it ends. Of course they're going to approve it.
It's like a big romance movie, right? You get down to the end, and
Every
the boy
year
kisses
it's the
the girl.
same. Sorry, yeah,
About every 2 years. Yeah, that's what it feels like.
every 2 years. There you go.
But if I ran my household budget the way that, never mind, we're not going to go there. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.